Hey, so we've got legendary artist, producer, songwriter. He's had the stuff that legends are made of.
Yes.
The career that he's had.
Well,
Uh,
that's very kind of you.
Absolutely. We've got Jim Messina on the line here at Swanky Southern Nights. So glad you could join us,
Yeah, how you
Jim.
doing, Jim?
No, I'm doing good. I'm sorry that I was unable to get the first call. I was in the middle of mixing, and I thought, who's that trying to call? And the phone number came back, and I better run out and see who it is today. I'm working and trying to finish actually a master that Steve is involved in. We recorded a number of shows last year,
Hmm.
and you know, given that I am an engineer and have had done this all my life,
Yeah.
I decided to start recording some of the shows when we were out on the road, at the slight chance that we might get something that we can use for the new band. Because for years I used a different group of people. Dave Byer was on drums.
Yes.
Who'd worked with Christopher Cross. Craig
Hmm.
Thomas had been with me since 1979. I had Gary Olear out of New Jersey was on violin, and I had Michael Brady, who'd worked with me on my Messina album and other projects too. But they were on the West Coast and on the East Coast. And when I finally moved to Tennessee, I realized it was just going to be very expensive. And then COVID hit, and obviously that even made it worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I decided to start looking around Nashville, because this is a hub for wonderful musicians of all styles, not just country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it took me a while. It took me a couple of years to pull together a group of people, of which Steve Nieves is certainly part of, and Jack Bruno, who was with Tina Turner and Joe Cocker, and later was with Delbert McClinton.
Yeah.
And when Delbert retired, I asked if Jack would be interested in working, and he came out and did some auditions. He's a wonderful, wonderful drummer.
It's awesome.
But you never know, because my style is so diverse,
Sure.
from folk to country to rock to Latin jazz.
Hmm.
Hmm.
But that intrigued him, and he really dug into it, and has brought just a wonderful feel to the music that I have. So I'm in the process of taking one of those evenings we had, and mixing it into a live album, which I want to be able to release for for our audiences. Really, what happens is that it's such a wonderful performing band, and
Yes.
most of my bands have been that, but from Loggins and Messina
Hmm.
to you name it. It's part of what my style is to have a great group of people who people don't really know at first, and then once they hear them, they get to know them, and
Yes.
just there's some talented people that are not superstars out there that I
Yeah.
that I that I enjoy watching come along, uh, so I'm getting that done, and I'm hoping that we'll have that out. Hopefully, I was trying to get it out by June, but with the weather and the touring
And the interviews?
and I mean
And the
it's
interviews.
unbelievable. Living in
Yeah.
Tennessee, all of a sudden tornado. Oh God! And then I got to go out and
Yeah.
shut everything down because lightning. If it hits,
Yes.
if it hits things, we're messed up.
Yeah. Welcome to Tennessee.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, how long have you been in Tennessee? I know you moved here just a few years ago, right? Is that right?
2018. So
And
what,
you're
5 years now? 6 years?
yeah, and you're liking it,
Yes.
except the weather, up
I,
and down weather, I guess.
Yeah.
well, the weather is a little bit of a problem. The people are wonderful. My wife is, she's actually from the Czech Republic, and
Hmm.
she was a professional school teacher from K to 12th grade,
Nice.
and
Nice.
opera singer. And she worked in California at that profession.
Mhm.
Our daughter came along about 17 years ago, and she decided to stop and be a mom.
Mhm.
And she's got into to equine.
Oh yeah.
And I say equine because she wanted a horse.
Yeah.
Aw.
That's
And I
great.
said, honey, what do you know about horses? And she says, well, I've always wanted one. I said, well, that's great. I said, once you start putting, little crates of horse poop by the bed because you just love it. I said, I'll get you a horse. So she goes, oh, that's just not fair. So I figured, you know what, maybe I could bust her of the habit because I'd had a horse ranch and all, and they're expensive and
Yeah.
they're, vet bills are unbelievable. Excuse me.
Yes.
So we were having coyote problems, stealing our
Yeah.
ducks and stuff. And so this was in California. So I said, honey, I found this place that had rescue donkeys. And I thought, well, donkey, equine. I said, why don't we get about 3 of them, and we can take and use them to, kind of curb our coyote problem because they'll go after them.
Yeah.
And I figured if they're only $125 a piece. And I thought, she'll get these 3 donkeys and they'll wear her out.
Mm-hmm.
And with feeding them and having to trim their hooves and doctoring them, that'll get rid of this horse problem. Well, the problem is that we had them donkeys for about 8 years, and the vets were saying, "Oh my God, these donkeys are in the best health that we've ever seen. They're so well taken care of." And so she finally says, "Well, can I have a horse now? I've kind of proven I'll take care of this stuff." And she did. And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what. Let's wait till we get to Tennessee, because if you're going to have a horse, you should have one that's acclimated to the environment, and it's just a different environment." So she says, "Okay." So we finally get a place here in Tennessee, after 7 or 8, 9 months. And I said, great. She said, well, can I have a horse? And I said, absolutely. She says, I said, what we'll do is we'll find a home now for the donkeys here. Mm-hmm. She goes, what are you talking about? And I said, well, we don't want to take them to Tennessee. They're used to it. I'm not leaving my donkeys behind. Well, they cost over $1,200 each to ship out to Tennessee.
Yeah.
And there was my $125 savings that down the drain. So we still have 2 of them. One of them needed to stay just because it was not, I don't know if it had Asperger's or it was autistic, but it just did not like a change of environment. It just went nuts. So we got it back to the original folks who had given them to us, and they found a home. And so we have 2 donkeys, and now we have a horse, and she's turned into, long story is that she's turned into a cowgirl. I mean, every day she's up, she's, mucking and cleaning and feeding, and she's entering contests and horse shows, and she's now up to getting 2nd prize and 3rd prize for some of the entries in herding and roping. And
really,
so I didn't realize I was marrying a cowgirl, and
that's awesome.
It is.
She's hard to keep up with.
Hey, where we're located, Southern Roots Radio, on our show is Columbia, Tennessee. We're the Mule Town capital of the world.
Right down here on the square.
So perhaps she needs to come down to Mule Days next spring.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That's big doings down here. Mule Days.
I have been down there, and I have to tell you, I had a great experience when it comes to mules. When I was in California, there's an organization that basically cowboys from all over the United States come to this organization. Mm-hmm. And while I was there, I had an opportunity to meet a man, a very wealthy man, who, while he loves his horses, he's a greater mule fan. And I was looking at the mule he had, and it was just incredibly good looking and smart. And I said, "Why would you ride a mule when you can ride a horse?" He said, "Man, these things will outlast a horse any day, especially if you're out in the back country." Yeah. He says you can you can put a 6-pack of beer in a side, and they'll go all day, and they won't accidentally take you down a trail that you're going to fall off of.
It's like off-roading with mules. You're like off-road. Yeah,
they're off-road vehicles.
That's right. Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, well, if you ever get a chance to come down, actually, I caught part of your show when you were here in Muletown. You were at the Mule House in Columbia, Tennessee.
We were. That was not the band. I don't think that we ended up using. I mean, I think we had Jeff Smith was on keyboards, wonderful player. Mm-hmm. Needed to be closer to home with family. Yeah. And then we had a different drummer. I can't remember his name at the moment. Than Jack. And I had a different band. Actually, it was a different band entirely, but it was a fun group, and but eventually it evolved to the musicians I have now.
Yeah, and these musicians that you have now, these guys are the ones that you're actually working on this live project to highlight.
Yeah, Jack Bruno's on drums. James Fraser, who's local here also, is on keyboards and vocals.
Jim. Yep.
And I've got Ben King, who plays bass. He's also local. Uh, he's about 33, young guy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course Stevie Nieves
Mm-hmm.
and some I'm missing. Jack, Steve, James. It seems like the band's a lot bigger than that, but it's just the five of us, I guess.
Yeah, well,
Big sound.
it's a tight no, it's just a really it's a great groove, tight group, and like you said, you've always surrounded yourself with great musicians, and I guess that comes from just being a producer. I mean that's your thing, right? I mean that's you've been a producer for so much of this music through the years.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I started actually playing in groups when I was 13 when I first entered high school.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a band all through high school, and as I look back, I guess I was the leader because I was the one doing the hiring
Yeah,
and scheduling the dates and booking them
yeah.
and then in my I think it was in my junior year I was asked by Glenn Edwards, who was a DJ working at KEZY radio
Mm.
that broadcasted from the Disneyland Hotel. He had started a small record company, and for some reason he took a liking to me and wanted me to produce for his company at 16. So I did that up until I graduated high school at 17.
Yeah.
And his company eventually was, just a small independent. He decided he needed to stop, and so I was in Hollywood by that time, and I just it's been part of my life, I guess, of doing that ever since I was a young man, and I think through the process of working with new musicians all the time or new talent, the excitement that everybody has
Yeah.
and the hopes that that's eventually going to be successful is something I find more interesting and satisfying
Yeah.
than necessarily being with a group of people who are all, stars and all that stuff. And I find later in life that has its everybody's got a big ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
There's a lot of
sometimes
energy. There's a lot of
there,
energy in that, though. That's
there's a lot of energy when
yeah.
that happens, and a lot of personality disorders and all kinds of stuff that goes along with it. But when you run across someone who's successful and really talented and just a good person, it's always a delight because they bring with that something that you ordinarily wouldn't uh, be in contact with. And I mean, Vince Gill is one of those people who I
Sure.
just
Yeah.
adore his playing, and
Yep.
I'm so pleased that he has been successful in life.
Mhm.
And
Well,
it's
we've heard story and story again about the very same thing about you.
Yeah.
So we're just so glad that you're visiting with us today. We've just heard he's Jim Messina and everybody knows his work and his history, but he's just a regular guy. He's a great guy, and so that's awesome. We love that.
well, I think some of the things I love to do, yes, producing records is part of that, but I also like to build furniture, and I've got a nice little wood shop and a metal
Nice.
shop for welding, and I like to paint, not houses, but pictures.
Yeah.
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 So I have plenty to do, and my wife doesn't allow me to. Part of my marriage vows was that I could not smoke or do drugs or
Hmm.
drink alcohol or go to saloons and whorehouses and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So
Yep.
I just found that she allows me to go to Lowe's and Home Depot. So you know,
That's great.
I, when you have those kinds of restrictions in life, it's kind of hard to age normally and get in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're staying grounded. That's a good thing, and
Yeah,
that's great.
exactly.
So your career speaks for itself. You've been with 3 super groups, and you've done so much music, like you said, a variety across the board. Of course, the country rock background and that sort of thing. We're Southern Roots Radio, and a lot of times we like to sort of dig in just a little bit to your roots and like what got you to where you are today, as far as the way you now. Tell me if I'm wrong. Please correct me. But you spent some time in Texas, is that right? Besides your time in California.
Yes, I was actually. I left California. I believe it was around 3, and from around 3 years old until I was in the 4th grade, I was living in South Texas, down in Harlingen, which was 20 miles from Brownsville.
Yeah.
So I grew up there, and my mother had her sister there, and her family was originally from Dallas Fort Worth.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother, my mom was born there. Grandfather was actually born in Tennessee,
Hmm.
and so I have family that stretches back on my mother's side, that all pretty much Texas, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So I grew up around a more southern environment, which is probably why I feel most comfortable now
Yeah.
here in Tennessee. But my father, even though the family was immigrants from Italy, when he was probably 19 or 20, 21 when he met my mom, he had a little band, and they liked playing Western swing.
Oh, yeah.
They were into Bob Wills, the Texas
Yes.
Playboys, Spade Cooley.
Yeah.
So I grew up with all of that in my home, and then of course when I'm with my father, we used to, in California, there used to be a show called Cal's Corral, which was a car dealer who used to bring in, you know, country singers to help sell cars. And, of course, everybody's looking for a stage,
Yeah.
and that's when there was also what was it called, a town hall party, where I first saw Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Two, Joe and Rosalie Maphis, the Collins kids. Those were the folks I used to sit on the couch with my father and would watch, playing music, which is how I kind of learned to play guitar, because there was no teachers in those days.
Yeah.
And fast forward, as I got older, we moved back to California. My stepfather, who was from Arkansas, was very much into Hank Snow,
Yeah.
Hank
Sure.
Williams, of course, early Johnny Cash.
Mm-hmm.
All of that was in my home, and my mother was kind of on the other side. She liked, I guess, what they used to call race records, which was basically rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
So she'd listen to the Cadillacs, and
Yeah.
she'd listen to Freddie King, and
Yeah.
so I had a lot of that going on. And then eventually, fast forward, once I got out of high school, as I was saying, I decided if I wasn't going to be a musician in Hollywood, studio musician, because I just didn't feel I was good enough. There was just so many great players. I mean, those are the days when Glenn Campbell was on guitars,
Yes. Yes.
Barney Kessel,
Yes.
Leon Russell on keyboards, and there's just Hal Blaine. You just had
Yeah.
everybody was so good in those days, and I was just a young whippersnapper. So I figured I would just go ahead and start studying engineering under the engineer that I hired when I was working with Ibis Records. So in the process of learning to become an engineer, we built a studio. Mike Duro and I, who was my mentor and he's still a dear friend after all these years.
Nice.
We built the studio for a group of folks out of Louisiana. Al Jones and Sonny Jones, and their sister, who I can't remember her name, was married to Hank Williams, as well as Johnny Horton, who both met early deaths, regrettably. And so we built this studio with them down in Hollywood near Vermont and Sunset, on Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
And it was called Universal Audio, and they said they had some friends that were in the business, and that once we got the studio built, they wanted to bring them in and let them see the place so they can let them know it's there and maybe cut some demos. And we thought, oh, great, that's good. So we got it built. And suddenly the night that we were supposed to have an opening, ends up that Roger Miller shows up.
Oh, nice.
James Burton.
Yeah.
Joe Osborne, Dorsey Burnett, Keith Allison,
Yeah.
Jerry Allison of the Crickets.
Yeah.
So all of the people that they knew were all the rockabilly folks that I grew up listening to.
Sure.
Ricky Nelson, you had James Burton on that,
Sure.
who later recorded with the Buffalo Springfield and who became a dear friend of mine. But what happened is that I just got around all that stuff at, I was probably 17 then, 18 years old. And
that's good schooling right there.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, I was in heaven just being around players that I always liked. And of course, watching James Burton play and Keith Allison, they were all so great. so going into the Buffalo Springfield, I already had that experience. So meeting with the Buffalo Springfield and working with them as an engineer, I was drawn to them, and I was fortunate enough to get put on those sessions.
Yeah.
Because the music they were creating were more like what I grew up around and
Yes.
and liked. They were more folky than what I had in my life, but they were moving into more rock and roll, and so that worked out great.
Yeah, just those elements that you've carried with you through your entire career, and it all seem to go back to those roots that you had,
They
growing
do.
up with country and rockabilly, and
Absolutely.
love that. And you've come
Absolutely.
full circle, and here you are in Tennessee with allergies and everything.
And
It's
horses.
Oh my
Horses.
God, yes. I have the worst allergies, and Tennessee doesn't help that at
No,
all.
we're sitting in an allergy bowl here, brother.
The ragweed capital of the world.
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah. The old song, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. I'd totally disagree. I was a session singer on Music Row for 20 years, and I kept saying, look, if you can make it in Tennessee, you can make it anywhere. Because we're in an allergy bowl. It's just horrible. It's terrible.
Well, you
here.
know what? I first discovered that in 1994 when I came here. I had a dear friend who built a studio here in town, in Leaper's Fork, of all places, and I came here to record because they had just opened their studio and they needed somebody to use it, and so I came. I got sick from allergies. I totally lost my voice.
Yeah.
Coughing, hacking, eyes watering,
Yes.
and I could not sing. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And I finally healed after a while. I actually had a friend who was a doctor, anesthesiologist here, and she said, "Jimmy, you're suffering from allergies," and that's the first time I ever heard of Claritin D.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
Oh my
right.
God!
Yep.
That was the lifesaver. And so,
Yes.
but I don't have it as bad now here.
Yeah, good.
But I do go to an allergist, and I take my daily pills to keep from getting
Same.
totally out of it.
Yeah. Well, if you're gonna do anything in this area, being an allergist is probably the thing.
There you go. There you
Right.
go. You'll never be short on business.
That's
An
right.
allergist is a good thing, and a psychologist maybe.
Yes, absolutely. No kidding. No kidding. Well, we just love the music that you've created through the years, with of course Buffalo Springfield, Poco, Loggins, and Messina, and all of the music that you've created yourself as well with your various bands and this great band that you've got right now. And we will be playing some throughout this show as well as your interview today.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jim. We
my pleasure.
we love your
Yes.
music and big fans, and so glad we had the opportunity to chat this today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, have fun with the horses.
No, I stay away from them. That's my wife's job.
Okay.
My job is to feed them. Hers job is to ride them.
Right. Good. Good.
All right. You take
Thank
care.
you so much, Jim.
Too.
Take
Have a
care.
good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.